Hey y'all, I'm finally back with another video, and today we're looking at the Sodder family. So as usual, grab a snack, a drink, and get under your blankets, and let's get it rolling. Okay y'all, so the Sodder family, who are they? That's what we're going to look into today. We're going to find out who they are and what actually happened to them. So first off, we're going to start off with the parents and the children. George Sodder and Jenny Cipriano were the parents of 10 children. John, Joseph, Marion, George Jr., Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny, Betty, and Sylvia. George Sodder was the father. He was born in Tula, Sardinia on November 23rd, 1895. He immigrated to the United States as a teenager. He was 13, and his brother had tagged along, but returned to Italy. So George eventually made his way down to West Virginia and married a woman named Jenny Cipriano, the mother, a fellow Italian immigrant. By 1994, they had 10 kids, and George Sodder owned a successful business called it the Dempsey Transfer Company, and he hauled dirt for the longest, but then moved on to coal. So they were doing very well financially. They owned a 2-story home and was about 2 miles north of the town. George held a lot of strong opinions about politics and business. When they first bought the house, the Sodders had planted a lot of flowers, and they began to stitch together a series of odd moments up before the fire that happened at the house. There's a stranger who appeared at the home a few months before the fire. He was asking about hauling work. He went to the back of the house, pointed at the 2 fuse boxes, and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." Now, George thought this was strange because he had just had a local power company come and check these wires, and they said that they were perfectly fine, so he didn't really know what was wrong. Around the same time, another man tried to sell the family a life insurance plan and became irritated because George declined it. The man says, quote, "Your house is going to catch on fire and your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to be paid for the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini." George was a pretty outspoken person and often got into heated arguments with the Italian community, so we didn't see the man's threats as seriously as he should have. So the oldest son said he noticed something strange on Christmas Eve, saying, quote, "There was a man parked along the U.S. Highway 21 intently watching the younger kids as they came home from school." So this will lead to Christmas morning around 12:30. After the children had opened a couple of presents and they all went to bed, the ring of a telephone broke the quietness of the house, and Jenny rushed to answer the phone. When she answered the phone, she heard an unfamiliar voice of a female who asked for another name that she was also unfamiliar with. On the other end, there was laughter and the clinking of bottles, to which Jenny told them that they had the wrong number and hung the phone up. When she was making her way back to the bed, she noticed that all the downstairs lights were on and the curtains were open and the front door was unlocked. She saw Marion asleep on the couch and assumed that everyone else had just went upstairs to fall asleep. So she shut off the lights, closed the curtains, and locked the door and went back to bed. When she started drifting off to sleep, she had heard a loud bang on the roof, then a rolling noise, but it was a pretty windy night, so she didn't really think much of it until about an hour later when she was woken again, but this time she was woken from a curl of smoke just surrounding their room. So, of course, naturally, she panicked and she quickly woke up George, both of them running out of the room. According to them, the back wall of the den, which was located across the hallway from their bedroom door, was already engulfed in flames. The lights, which were still on when Jenny was first alerted to the fire, were now out, and George and Jenny had told their children to get out of the house immediately, so they all ran to the front door. Marion woke up and went to her parents' room, and there she saw Sylvia, so she grabbed her while running out of the house. The two had successfully escaped, and at this point, John and George Jr. had woken up and realized what was happening. And due to all the stories, it is difficult to recreate what happened perfectly, because on 2 different accounts, they were just completely different. So on the first account, George Jr. and John attempted to get the attention of the other children that were on the second floor with them by yelling for them. And they said they heard one of their siblings yell back to them, but there was no communication in the fire between the 5 children who didn't make it out. And then on the other account, John shook the children awake before he and George Jr. made their escape. But in both cases, we did see George Jr. and John were able to make an escape, but barely. They both sustained minor burns. So in this, we're seeing a lot of suspicions with 2 different men that came up to this house and are like, "Hey, your wires aren't correct. when he's already had somebody locally come and look at these wires, and he's had his house rewired already. So, and with George also getting to often heated arguments, we can also see that people are maybe after them for what he's done, though we don't actually know how heated these arguments really were and how bad they got. So when George and his two older sons got out of the house successfully, they went to go rush to get the ladder that they always have nearby, but when they got over to where it was, they saw that it wasn't there anymore, which is pretty weird because they always have it in that spot. And George was obviously desperate to get his kids out of the house, so he went to his truck to go back it up, but the truck wouldn't start, and so he tried to do the other one, in which that one also did not start. George found this pretty weird because he's had no problems with these trucks starting in the past, so that was obviously very infuriating to him because he was not able to get to his children. Many people say that he probably flooded the engine because he was in such a hurry to try and save his children. But during this, Marion ran to the neighbor's house for help, and Mrs. Davis attempted to ring the fire department, but the operator didn't answer. So Thomas Smith, which is another neighbor, they were driving around 1 a.m. and saw the house on fire. So he did drive back to Fayetteville. Sorry if I butchered that. But he was able to reach the fire chief by the phone, but unfortunately they were short-staffed due to the holidays and weren't able to make it to the house till several hours later, 8 a.m. Fire Chief F.J. Morris reportedly attributed the slow response to difficulties driving the fire truck, which he himself did not know how to drive. So, to me, honestly, that's pretty suspicious. How does it take you 8 hours to get to this one location when you're only 2.5 miles away from them? Reports stated that the home only took 45 minutes to burn down, but authorities later admitted the house continued to burn for hours, and the police searched for debris on Christmas morning, but the search wasn't successful. They weren't able to find any human remains, so in this, they said that the children were just fully cremated in the fire. Obviously, Jenny and George were overcome with grief for the loss of their 5 children, and in the end, they did accept the fact that the 5 children did burn in the fire. The state fire marshal told George not to disrupt the scene so that they could investigate further. And in this investigation, they just said that the children were, in fact, dead by the fire and did not want to continue with the investigation. So after this, Jenny and George went up to the house and wanted to hold a ceremony. So they planted flowers and they held the ceremony, except they did not attend to it because they were just too distraught. The coroner's office said that the fire was most likely because of faulty wiring, which George found unreasonable because they had just recently had that house rewired and inspected. So that's also pretty weird because, this is like the 3rd time he's being told this, and after that. But for the next 2 years, George and Jenny attempted to get on with their lives, and they were still grieving, but they did accept the fact that their children died in that fire. But however, this would change in 1947. So in 1947, there was a photo published of several children in a Look magazine, and both George and Jenny felt that one of the kids had striking resemblance to their deceased daughter, Betty. They were also concerned that there was no human remains found in the fire. So once they saw that photo, they were convinced that those 5 children were still alive and just were not with them anymore. So they did hire a private investigator to help them sort out the feelings of the children still being alive, though it was not proven that they were alive, and George and Jenny are certain their kids were abducted during the fire and that the fire was just a cover-up. About 2 years later, they found a human heart in the rubble. So it was around this time when the couple learned that Fire Chief Morris had allegedly found a human heart in the rubble. When the couple asked why they didn't know, he simply stated he had already mentioned this. So we're seeing where Morris is either lying or he did mention it and parents just were not aware of the fact that he was telling them everything that was being found. So the heart was in a box and that box was buried, which is pretty weird. But upon further investigation of this, they came back with the result of it just being beef liver and not a human heart. And allegedly, Morris confessed that he planted that there. Well, not planted it, but he he lied about it so that George and Jenny would believe their children died in the fire and to bring them some closure. So, in that case, a lot of people believe that he did plant the heart there, and a lot of people believe that it was just for some reason there, hidden in the rubble, or that somebody else went over there and hid it. So a lot of people do say that the bodies have been cremated, but specialists say that there should still be bone fragments left because a house fire cannot possibly get up to as hot to where a whole body would be able to cremate, especially with the bone fragments. So, several years later, though, it was confirmed that the basement had coal in it, which would allow the fire to be a lot hotter, but still not hot enough to where it would burn the bodies, because even specialists say after 2 hours of a body being in a fire 2,000 degrees hot, there's still a lot of bone fragments left. So it's just very weird. So with different stories being made, some people say that there was a bomb that went off that could have caused the fire, which would explain the loud thud that Jenny heard during the night. But with her not really thinking much of it, she just kind of went back to sleep and pushed it off. Others say that the man that was pulled over on the highway would have been the man that came over and told them that their children were going to die in a fire, which was pretty weird, and he knew it would happen. So with their wires and even if it was a power thing or a wire failure, there would be none. So when Jenny woke up, the lights were still on until they flickered out because of the fire. So that right there tells us that power couldn't have really been an issue with the wires. But there was a lot with this case that there's just so much weird in it. With 5 kids escaping and them going to the neighbors for them to call fire dispatch. I just find it weird that it took them 8 hours to be able to get to this house, and the fire's already gone. I mean, the house was burned down to ashes. Nothing was left. And then, I can see how so many people would want to go after them because of George heated arguments. But as we look back at it, we never really know how heated his arguments got. Like, was he actually getting into these fights, or was it just small little things that he didn't agree with and other people wanted him to see it a different way? So that's a lot of things on there that just you really have to look into. There's a lot of questions still going around. Who was the first guy that came, and was he partnered up with the second guy? Were they wanting to take these kids and use them for trafficking? A lot of people say that these kids were sent to Italy and were used there. But most of all, we're seeing a lot of pattern of the kids just being used for money. And not a lot of people believe that they did actually die in the fire, which I don't really believe either. There would have been human remains. They would have been found. And even not, I still think it's a little difficult for that to happen. But that's about that's about the Sodder family crisis. If you ever see anything that I missed in their stories or in any other stories that I post, please comment it down below and make sure to leave a like. I'll see y'all in the next video. Make sure to stay tuned.